Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining the virtual public meeting for the Jove Solar Project Environmental Impact Statement. The meeting will begin at 3:30 p.m. Mountain Standard Time, so we'll be back with you in just a few minutes. Thank you for joining the virtual public meeting for the Jove Solar Project Environmental Impact Statement. The meeting will begin at 3:30 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. Welcome to the virtual public meeting for the Jove Solar Project Environmental Impact Statement. The time is 3:30 p.m. Mountain Standard Time, and the meeting has now started. My name is Tanya Fragomeno, and I will be the moderator for today's meeting. The meeting is being recorded, and it will be posted to the project e-planning website for anyone unable to join us tonight. Closed captioning is available for this virtual public meeting. If closed captioning does not appear automatically on your screen, click on the CC icon, which is likely located at the bottom of your screen. If you're joining us from a mobile device, you might need to tap your screen to see the menu options. If you're having technical difficulties with using Zoom Webinar, please contact our support team at area code 858-290-2175. All attendees will be muted during this webinar until it is their turn to ask a question during our question and answer session later in the meeting. If you would like to know if your organization is in attendance, please add your name and organization into the Q&A box, which is likely located at the bottom of your screen, to let us know that your organization is in attendance. I will now turn it over to Ms. Erica Stewart of the Bureau of Land Management, Arizona, Colorado River District, Yuma Field Office. Erica?
Hello, how is everybody doing this evening? My name is Erica Stewart, and I am the project manager with the Bureau of Land Management, Colorado River District. I am the project manager for the BLM for the Jove Solar Project, and thank you for joining us this evening. Just real briefly before we get started, the BLM team led by Dolores Garcia, Yuma Field Manager, hop on the screen and say hello.
Hello, everyone.
And Dolores is going to be our line manager for the BLM. Stephanie Lauer, project manager for 174 Power Global, like to come on and say hello.
Hello, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Stephanie Lauer, and I am the permitting manager for the applicant for the project, Jove Solar LLC.
Thank you, Stephanie. And Dave, would you like to come on and say hello for Stantec?
Hi, Dave Plumpton here. I'll be the project manager for Stantec, working on behalf of the BLM. Thanks everybody for joining us today.
Thank you very much. We will begin with a presentation about the project, and we'll follow the presentation with a question and answer session. Formal comments, that is, comments that you want to be addressed in the Environmental Impact Statement, or EIS, and included in the project record, must be submitted in writing through either the BLM e-planning project website, via email, fax, or US mail. Instructions on how and where to submit your comments will be described shortly, and our final slide will have all of the addresses and contact information you will need. Our goal tonight is to provide an overview of the project and the EIS process, answer your questions about the project, and provide information on how to submit those comments. The Jove Solar Project is a proposed 600 megawatt photovoltaic facility proposed on approximately 3,495 acres of BLM managed public land and 38 acres of La Paz County lands. The project site is south of Interstate 10, midway between Phoenix and the California border, roughly 85 miles from downtown Phoenix. The BLM will prepare an environmental impact statement, or EIS for short, for the requirements of the National Environmental Policy Act, or NEPA. The EIS will disclose the potential effects of the project and alternatives. The purpose of today's meeting is to provide the public an opportunity to learn about the proposed project and to ask questions. Public involvement is a critical component of the NEPA process, and we welcome your questions, concerns, and substantive comments. As mentioned, comments must be submitted in writing to be included in the project record. There are a few methods by which you can provide written comments. Written comments may be submitted electronically via participation of the portal on the project e-planning website, by email, fax, or US postal mail. Comments must be submitted in writing by February 1st, 2023 to be considered in development of the draft EIS. The website, email, fax, and mailing address are listed on the screen and will be shown again at the end of the presentation. The National Environmental Policy Act of 1969, or NEPA as it's commonly referred to, established a framework for evaluating the effects of federal decision-making on the environment, and including the public, tribes, and federal, state, and local governments in this process. NEPA requires federal agencies to consider the potential environmental impacts of proposed actions as part of their planning and decision-making process. Federal agencies are required to coordinate with other federal agencies, state and local governments, tribal nations, and any member of the public that may have an interest in the proposal. The goal of NEPA is to make and disclose informed decisions about proposed actions that consider the human and natural environment. NEPA provides several options for impact assessment and disclosure depending upon the anticipated impacts of the proposal. The BLM has already determined that the Jove Solar Project would likely result in significant impacts and thus requires preparation of an environmental impact statement, or EIS. A requirement for EISs is that the decision maker, in this case the BLM Yuma field manager, considers all practical means to avoid or minimize environmental harm. The BLM will evaluate potential impacts to a wide range of human and natural resource areas. The environmental impact assessment of the proposed action and alternatives will address important ecological, economic, and social issues as identified through scoping. The EIS will evaluate the proposed action and alternatives on the basis of direct, indirect, residual, and cumulative effects. Effects will be expressed in terms of changes that would occur on the physical, land, water, air, biological, plants and animals, economic, and social components of the human environment. The BLM is complying with NEPA by preparing an environmental impact statement, or EIS. The public is invited to comment on the proposal during scoping, which is this current phase, and can comment later in the process when the draft EIS is available for public review, which is anticipated to be in the summer 2023. Additionally, the public may submit comments when the final EIS is published, which is anticipated to be in early 2024. The EIS is expected to take up to 2 years to complete. Major milestones are expected to be completed under the following approximate timeline. The notice of intent to prepare the EIS was published in the Federal Register on December 7th, 2022. This officially began the NEPA process. The public scoping period follows and as a period when the public can provide written comments for consideration in development of the draft EIS. Comments must be submitted in writing by February 1st, 2023 to be considered in the development of the draft EIS. A draft EIS will be prepared that analyzes potential impacts. This draft EIS is expected to be published in the summer of 2023. A notice of availability will be published in the Federal Register announcing availability of the draft EIS and the start of a 45-day comment period to review and provide comments on the analysis. Comments are received on the draft EIS will be reviewed, and any substantive comments that have not already been addressed in the draft EIS will be addressed in the final EIS. The final EIS is expected to be published in early 2024. After the final EIS is published, there is a 30-day waiting period, after which the record of decision is published, which documents BLM's decision on whether or not to grant a right-of-way permit for the Jove Solar project. The record of decision will also describe any mitigation measures that should be followed to minimize potential environmental impacts. The record of decision is anticipated in 2024. Jove Solar, which is wholly owned subsidiary of 174 Power Global, has requested a 30-year right-of-way grant to construct, operate, maintain, and decommission a utility-scale solar photovoltaic energy generating facility and potentially battery energy storage system on federal lands. Jove Solar filed the original right-of-way application to BLM in October of 2019 under the name Taurus Solar, and submitted an updated right-of-way application under the name Jove Solar in August of 2022. The project is a 600 megawatt alternating current photovoltaic solar facility and would be located on approximately 3,495 acres of BLM managed public lands and 38 acres of La Paz County land. The project would connect into the regional transmission system via the Plan Cielo Azul 500 kV switching station, adjacent to the 10 Westlink transmission line corridor. Additional elements being considered for the project include a battery energy storage system and a substation within the facility fence line. Purpose and need is a technical term in NEPA. The purpose of the action is to respond to the applicant's request for a right-of-way for the utility-scale solar energy generating facility. The need for the action is the BLM's responsibility under the Federal Land Policy and Management Act of 1976. The proposed action is a 600 megawatt alternating current photovoltaic solar facility on approximately 3,495 acres of BLM managed lands in the Yuma field office. Shown on this map, the project would be in southeastern La Paz County, Arizona, approximately 22 miles east-southeast of the community of Brenda and the I-10 Highway 60 junction, 35 miles east of Quartzsite, and 30 miles west of the community of Tonopah. The project is proposed within a solar variance area identified in the 2012 BLM Western Solar Plan and received the director's concurrence on a variance on December 7th, 2021. The BLM will prepare an EIS per the requirements of NEPA to disclose the potential effects of the project and any action alternatives to the public. The EIS and Record of Decision will document the BLM selection process. The BLM also published a notice of segregation in the Federal Register to segregate 3,495 acres of public lands from appropriation under the public land laws, including the mining law, but not the mineral leasing or material sales acts, for a period of 2 years from the date of publication of the notice, subject to valid existing rights. This segregation will facilitate the orderly administration of the public lands while the BLM considers potential solar development on the described parcel. This project is proposed to help serve the increase in demand for clean, low-carbon electric power in a manner that is consistent with federal policy mandates and incentives for development of new renewable energy resources, while avoiding and minimizing potential adverse impacts to the environment. President Biden has set ambitious goals to achieve a carbon pollution-free power sector by 2035 and puts the United States on an irreversible path to a net zero carbon economy by 2050. Per Section 207 of Executive Order 14008, the Department of the Interior is identifying steps to accelerate responsible renewable energy production on public lands and waters to support climate and environmental goals. In addition, the Energy Act of 2020 requires the Secretary of Interior to establish national minimum goals for renewable energy production on federal land. Further, the Secretary shall seek to permit at least 25 gigawatts of electricity from wind, solar, and geothermal energy not later than 2025 through management of public lands and administration of federal laws. During construction, an estimated average of 300 workers will be employed for the project, with peak employment at approximately 600 workers. Most workers likely will be employees of construction and commercial electrical companies under the contract to the applicant. The workers would include a mix of locally hired workers for civil, electrical, and structural construction, and specialized workers for construction of the on-site high-voltage electrical work, testing, and commissioning of the project components. Local hiring would depend on the availability of workers with the appropriate skills. There would not be any temporary or permanent on-site housing provided for construction or operations, maintenance, or decommissioning workers. Once operational, the project would employ 6 to 8 workers for plant management, facility maintenance, site security, and other operational related needs. There are several federal, state, and local permits, authorizations, and approvals that would be required for the project. Besides the Bureau of Land Management, agency involved in some way include the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, Arizona Game and Fish, Arizona Department of Environmental Quality, and La Paz County. The project area spans 3,495 acres of land administered by the BLM and 38 acres of La Paz County land, which is largely undeveloped and consists mainly of relatively flat terrain. The project would be located in an area where public lands are used in part for other BLM authorized and historical land uses, including mineral lease rights, sand and gravel mining, pipeline, highway rights of ways, cattle grazing, wildlife, and dispersed recreation. The project would be consistent with the BLM's multiple use mission to focus nationwide on 5 overall priorities, one of which is encouraging and facilitating renewable energy development, solar, wind, and geothermal on the nation's public lands. I will now turn the presentation over to Stephanie Lauer of Jove Solar, the applicant for the proposed Jove Solar project, to review the project in more detail.
Thank you, Erica. This figure shows a typical utility scale photovoltaic system. Solar panels are grouped into arrays. And for this project, the solar arrays would be on single axis tracking systems that follow the sun's movement across the sky. The direct current, or DC electricity, is collected from the arrays and fed into inverters that convert the DC electricity into alternating current or AC electricity. The electricity would then be sent via overhead collection lines to combining switchgear and a substation, and then onto the regional grid via the 10 West Link transmission line. Here you see a preliminary site plan for the Jove Solar project. Please note that this is a conceptual layout. Facility features could move a bit within the project area as the design is refined. The arrays will cover the majority of the site with collection lines connecting the arrays. You can see the green utility corridor extending north from the project, which would contain 69 kV overhead connection lines and would be within an easement on La Paz County land. The electricity would enter a substation for an adjacent solar project and the 10 West Link Cielo Azul switchyard. The 10 West Link transmission line is shown here at the top of the map as a yellow dashed line. In preparing our application for the right-of-way, we considered alternative locations, technologies, and project designs. For alternative project site locations, we considered locations along the expected route of the 10 West Link transmission corridor. Private, state, and BLM sites were reviewed based on their proximity to the 10 West Link interconnection facility, solar energy potential, potential hydrology impacts to the solar project, biological resources, and cultural areas of significance, aesthetics, and other potential resource issues. We also evaluated alternative technologies. Other means of renewable power generation include wind energy or solar thermal generation. However, this location is not favorable to wind energy generation due to relatively low wind speeds and resource quality. And solar thermal generation technology requires increased land area and typically large amounts of water consumption per year. Additionally, if not properly sited, wind and solar thermal facilities may have greater visual and biological impacts. Of these technologies, PV technology generally is more cost-effective, may have lower resource impacts, and is the most efficient solar energy conversion technology for this area. We have designed the Jove Solar project to avoid known conflicts, such as existing infrastructure or other land uses, and to maintain access along public roadways. We've planned setbacks from areas most likely to support wildlife or to contain cultural and historic resources. We'll consider alternative project designs as necessary if the project-specific resource surveys and this NEPA process indicate a need to avoid especially sensitive areas. If the project is approved for a right-of-way, the overall construction period is estimated to be approximately 12 to 18 months, with a desired in-service date of first quarter 2027. In general, pre-construction activities such as engineering, surveys, and pre-clearing work would occur in 2024. Construction of the facility would occur in 2025. Plant energization and commissioning would occur in late 2025. The plant would be substantially complete in December 2025, and any remaining construction tasks would occur in 2026 through early 2027. I'd like to turn this presentation over to Mr. Dave Plumpton, the contractor preparing the EIS to review environmental resources.
Thank you, Stephanie. As Erica described, this EIS will evaluate the typical set of environmental resource topics required by NEPA. We'll briefly highlight a few of these resources in this presentation. A wide variety of wildlife, including reptiles, birds, and mammals, occurs within the project area, typical of the Sonoran Basin and Range, and of the vegetation community in southwestern Arizona. This includes a few species with elevated legal and conservation status. For example, the project would be located in habitat that has a high likelihood of supporting the Sonoran pronghorn, which is endangered under the Federal Endangered Species Act. However, this population is considered experimental and non-essential. Additionally, several species of bats and birds that are considered sensitive by the Bureau of Land Management have a moderate potential to use the project site. Vegetation is typical of the creosote white bursage community, and there are no plant species listed as either threatened or endangered under the Federal Endangered Species Act, and none listed as sensitive by the BLM that are known to occur in the project area. The project area has a long cultural history dating back from about 10,000 BC, but the area is comparatively not well studied for cultural resources. Accordingly, the potential for detecting previously unrecorded cultural resources remains unknown. Cultural resources investigations for the project will be conducted to document prehistoric and historic sites, and an unanticipated discoveries plan will be developed for the project. The BLM will complete Native American tribal consultation regarding potential impacts that the project may have on properties of traditional, religious, or cultural importance. The project is in a grazing allotment that's managed by the BLM and which spans 145,165 acres. Specific to the proposed project area, the BLM issued 2-year notifications and requests for waivers to the leasees in February of 2022. Jove Solar LLC is actively working with permittees as the project develops. There are a few other authorized uses near the project area. For example, the Kofa National Wildlife Refuge, which is managed by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and encompasses 665,400 acres, is 10 miles west-southwest of the project. And the Eagle Tail Mountains Wilderness, which spans 97,880 acres, is 1.2 miles south of the project. As mentioned, written comments for this public scoping period may be submitted electronically via the online form available on the project website, also by email, by fax, or by postal mail. Comments must be submitted by February 1st, 2023 to be considered in the development of the draft EIS. And the website, email, fax, and mailing address are shown on the screen. That concludes the presentation for today's meeting. We'll now move to the question and answer session. And to facilitate the Q&A session, I'll turn the meeting back over to our meeting facilitator, Tanya Fragamento.
Thank you, Dave, and thank you everyone for joining us today. My name is Tanya Fragamento, and I will be the moderator for the question and answer session. Dave will also be joining me to assist with the questions. He will be reading any questions that come into the Q&A box during this meeting. Erica Stewart, the Bureau of Land Management's project lead for the EIS, will be answering questions, accompanied by other subject matter experts. We have about 30 minutes for question and answers, and we can stay online a bit longer if we haven't gone through everyone in the queue. If you would like to ask a question tonight, you can do so by typing your question into the Q&A box or by clicking the raise hand icon to enter the queue for a verbal question. The Q&A and raise hand functions can be found on the bottom of your screen. If you're joining us online from a mobile device, you may need to tap your screen to see the Q&A and raise hand icons appear. If you're joining us by telephone and not through the online app, dial *9 to enter the queue for a verbal question. You would then need to dial *6 to unmute once I've called on you. I will call on individuals in the order they entered the queue. If you're joining by telephone, I will call on you by the last few digits of your phone number. If you already had a chance to ask a question and have re-entered the queue for another question, I will call on individuals we haven't heard from first, and then we'll circle back to you if time permits. Anyone asking a question verbally will have 3 minutes to ask their question. We will place a timer on the screen. Please remember that this opportunity is for questions only. For comments, please submit them in writing via the project website, email, fax, or mail. The BLM will review comments received for consideration in development of the draft EIS. For technical assistance with Zoom webinar, please call our support team at area code 858-290-2175. We will now begin the question and answer session. So please go ahead and feel free to raise your hand to enter the queue. And we will begin with the questions that we have in our Q&A box. So Dave, I will turn it over to you to read those, please.
Thank you, Tanya. We do have our first question. Why no plan amendment? Solar is not in compliance with VRM Class 3. It will be visible from wilderness. Once again, that question was, why no plan amendment? Solar is not in compliance with VRM Class 3, and it will be visible from the wilderness. Erica.
Hello, and thank you for asking that question. The team that did the visual study did a series of 5 KOPs around the project site to analyze the visual impacts for the area. And with that, they did include a KOP from the top of Courthouse Rock, which is just adjacent to the wilderness there and the Eagle Tail Wilderness. So, and the site was not visible. We have additional studies ongoing, including a glare study that takes into consideration this area as well. And so as that information comes forward, we'll be able to include it in the analysis and the impacts addressed in the draft EIS.
And Erica, for our audience, can you let us know what KOP stands for, please? Key observation point. It wasn't a quiz.
Thank you.
Okay, so next question. Are you done? You're done with that question?
Yes.
Okay, next question, Dave.
Is there an expected project cost? Who will be responsible for paying for this project? Again, is there an expected project cost, and who will be responsible for paying for the project?
And Stephanie, would you like to address that question?
Sure. Jove Solar LLC will be paying for not only the NEPA process that we're going through right now, but also for the construction of the project and maintenance and operation. I do not know the estimated cost for this project, though, at this time.
Okay, thank you, Stephanie. Dave, you can go ahead with the next ones.
Thank you. Will visual and other impacts to the Eagle Tails Wilderness be analyzed in the EIS? Are there any opportunities to expand the project in another direction to keep the project away from the Eagle Tails? Again, will visual and other impacts to the Eagle Tails Wilderness be analyzed in the EIS? Are there any opportunities to expand the project in another direction to keep the project away from the Eagle Tails? Erica.
Okay, so the first part of that question, will the visual and other impacts to the wilderness be analyzed in the EIS? So yes, if there are issues related to the wilderness area, they will be addressed in the EIS through the NEPA process. For the second part of your question, I'm going to go ahead and ask Stephanie to address it. Are there opportunities to expand the project in another direction to keep it away from the wilderness?
We are actually constrained by to the north. Presumably that would be the direction that would keep it away from the Eagle Tail Wilderness. We're constrained from moving to the north by other land uses and another solar project to the north. So we can't actually move it to the north. We did already move the project further from the Eagle Tail Wilderness by eliminating a portion of the project that was originally proposed, potentially proposed within a BLM utility corridor. After discussions with the BLM, we did remove that southern portion of the project. So we're always willing to look at other alternatives, but moving the project further to the north is not feasible.
Okay, we can move on to the next question, Dave.
Thank you. What level of disturbance to the soil is anticipated for the installation of the panels? Are you considering alternatives that would reduce the need for grading of the project site? Again, what level of disturbance to the soil is anticipated for the installation of the panels? And are you considering alternatives that would reduce the need for grading of the project site?
Thank you, Dave. Stephanie, would you or your team like to address this question?
Stephanie, I'll go ahead and take that. This is Rick Hohenstein, the project manager. We are constantly looking for opportunities to reduce the impact of soil disturbance, and we will have minimal grading on the site. The only grading that we anticipate will be stormwater retention features that will be added into the existing areas to maintain the flow of water, sheet flow of water off the site, so it's not a problem for our neighbors.
Okay, Dave, you can go ahead with the next one.
Thank you. What will happen to the land and materials after the project's lifespan? To repeat, what will happen to the land and materials after the project's lifespan?
So this project's application was for a 30-year right-of-way. And as part of that process, the BLM includes a reclamation bond, and the company would be responsible for returning the land to what is there currently prior to construction. So if the project is approved, it would be required to be turned back and reclaimed after which.
Hey, Dave, before we move on to the next question, just a reminder, if anyone would like to enter the queue for a verbal question, you can go ahead and use the raise hand icon, or you can continue typing questions into the Q&A box. Dave?
Thank you. Next question. Why is the project not located closer to metropolitan areas such as Phoenix, where the electricity will be used? Once again, why is the project not located closer to metropolitan areas such as Phoenix, where the electricity will be used?
Thank you, Dave. Stephanie, would you like to explain why you chose this particular location?
Yes, I think for this question, I'm going to direct it to Patrick Shim, our lead project developer.
Sure, I can go ahead and answer that question. So I don't think the project necessarily has to be close to the load, as we will be utilizing the transmission line to bring the electricity from the site to the metropolitan area. So the transmission line will be utilized.
Okay, thank you. Looks like for now we have one more question in the Q&A box.
Question, have you added the Sonoran Desert tortoise to the wildlife list? It has history in that area. To repeat, have you added the Sonoran Desert tortoise to the wildlife list? It has history in that area.
Yes, thank you for reading that one, Dave. And the answer from our biologist is that yes, it has been added as a species to be reviewed in the process.
Okay, thank you. We have one hand raised, so we'll go ahead and take that in a second. If you'd like to keep typing in questions, please go ahead and do so. We have about 20 minutes remaining in the meeting, so go ahead and keep those questions coming. So going to a verbal question, we have Kevin Emmerich. I will give you permission to unmute yourself, so you'll see a pop-up button.
Hello, and thank you. I do have a question as a follow-up to what I typed in the Q&A. Hard to type on a phone. So anyways, the question is about the VRM class 3. So there are several solar projects that are in approval process or have been approved in Nevada on VRM class 3 lands. And in all cases, they were found to be visually incompatible with the standards of BRM class 3 objectives, and that's to partially maintain the landscape, allow some development, but the development should not overwhelm the viewscape. In this case, solar actually will do that. I don't believe it's not going to be visible from any of the wilderness areas around there, including the Kofa Mountains. It's a really large project. My last trip to the area, it seemed like there was some vertical relief where that visibility will happen. If you don't amend that plan, or you won't be able to downgrade the visual class, and this might be found incompatible with that BRM class 3. So that's to clarify my question on that. It's not necessarily if it's visible from a wilderness. The BLM established that visual standard in the area anyway, and you can argue that it's not in compliance with that. Question number 2 is how will you mitigate Sonoran pronghorn future habitat? Are you going to space out the panels? Those are my questions. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much. So Erica, do you want to address that?
Sure. Hello, Kevin. Thank you for your questions. For the visual impact, we will definitely take into consideration your thoughts on using the COPA area as a possible KOP. I don't believe that's currently being used. But that's something we can definitely look at. And in terms of a plan amendment, based on the KOP preliminary studies and the glare study that's currently underway, those decisions will be made in terms of level of NEPA being the EIS, but whether or not that indicates a plan amendment or not will be made at that time. So thank you very much for bringing those forward. In terms of the Sonoran pronghorn, I'm actually going to see if Ford is available to come on and have a brief discussion on how that is being addressed through the biological team.
Appreciate your question. We're going to work to try to find ways of either habitat improvements in creating corridors for path of travel for the animals back and forth across I-10, because there is also potential for some kind of variance to be established with putting these fields in. Currently, from preliminary looks, the habitat within the area of these solar proposed is of low productivity for grazing, but we're going to continue to look at that and try to find some way of offsetting any loss of habitat for grazing.
Okay, thank you both. So we have a new question in our Q&A box. Dave?
The question, what other solar development is north of Jove Solar? To repeat, what other solar development is north of Jove Solar?
I can field that one, Erica. I'm going to direct that question again to our lead project developer, Patrick Shim.
Sure. Yeah, I do. There seems to be a couple of solar application in the area. So from our understanding, there are other solar development, mostly to the north of the project. So that's our understanding. One of the project is being developed by us as well, 174 Power Global, that is directly associated to the north of this area.
Okay, thank you for the question. We do not have anyone in the verbal queue, so you can use the raise hand icon to enter the verbal queue. We have one question that just came into the Q&A box, so we'll have Dave read that for us.
The question, just to clarify, after this project is complete, it will only need 6 to 8 workers for day-to-day maintenance and tasks. Again, just to clarify, after this project is complete, it will only need 6 to 8 workers for day-to-day maintenance and tasks.
Stephanie, would your team like to address that one?
Yes, please. Rick, are you available to answer that one?
Yes, I am. So the project, thankfully, is it harvests the sun, so that doesn't require a whole lot of maintenance to work. Now the systems are automated for the most part, and the 6 to 8 workers on site will be primarily ensuring that those areas that do get out of synchronization or have electrical issues are maintained and both safely and efficiently, as well as the command and control of the site for potential ingress from thieves or some other types of activity. It's primarily the systems will be automated, and we also would do any kind of veg control or vegetation control on site if needed. And that's so it's pretty self-sufficient in that regard.
Thank you for the question. We have no more questions in the queue. Okay, we have a new one that just popped up. Dave?
Question, will the BLM be evaluating lake effect for migratory birds? How often will the area be walked to find any birds that impacted? To repeat, will the BLM be evaluating lake effect for migratory birds, and how often will the area be walked to find any birds that were impacted?
Yes,
So
I'll take this one for you, Erica. I appreciate the question. We will be monitoring for impacts on birds. I do not have a specific on how many times it will be balked or the frequency of that. But yes, that is definitely a major factor in any analysis that we're going to be doing for solar fields.
Thank you for the question. We have no one in the verbal queue. If you'd like to enter the verbal queue, go ahead and click on the raise hand icon on your screen. If you're joining from a mobile device, you might need to tap your screen for the icon to appear. We don't have any more questions at the moment in the Q&A box. So we will be just standing by for any questions. We have a new question that came in. So Dave, if you could read that for us, please.
Question, will the cumulative effects of multiple solar projects in the area be analyzed? Repeating the question, will the cumulative effects of multiple solar projects in the area be analyzed?
Thank you for your question. We have Nancy Favor, who's leading the NEPA efforts. Nancy, would you like to address this question?
Sure, thank you. Good question. Yes, we can consider the projects that we are proposed and that we have information on in our analysis within those projects that are within an area that would be causing within the impact area of this project, if that makes sense. So yes, we will be considering those other projects in the EIS. Thank you.
All right, thank you for the question. Next question, Dave.
Question, did you look at locations closer adjacent to cities? And if so, why were they rejected? Again, did you look at locations closer or adjacent to cities? And if so, why were they rejected?
Patrick Shim, our lead developer, are you available to answer this question?
Sure. Yeah, I think there are multiple aspects that we review in selecting sites. So I think we've looked at, as mentioned, Stephanie's mentioned, multiple locations, and there are several reasons, I guess, we've selected this site. I don't want to say like how we rejected perhaps like other sites, but there were good reasons that from sunshine perspective to land costs and all the other related areas that led us to select the site. And again, one of the reasons was the transmission line being the other project.
Okay, from BLM, we have Derek Eisenbach, who's going to expand a little bit more for us.
Yeah, hi everyone. This is Derek Eisenbach, and I'm the program lead for BLM Arizona's renewable energy program. And I can talk a little bit about site selection from the BLM side of things. I guess the first thing to do is kind of take a kind of global look at power and how power ends up being sited. BLM is sort of structured by its plans, and in our plans, we have these solar energy zones. We have 3 of those in Arizona, and those were sort of designated as the preferred areas for renewable energy development. And we have exclusion areas as well, and then we have these variance areas, and that's kind of everywhere else. And the Jove project is in a variance area. Our 3 solar energy zones right now are actually committed to other projects. So there is no sort of like preferred area, if you will, to sort of push Jove or encourage Jove into. As an agency, we're responsive. And so what that basically means is that the market is going to determine what is the best location for solar. And a number of factors go into that, including transmission line capacity, available lands under application, the ownership and management of those lands, and just the opportunities really to bring power online and supply the grid. And so as an agency, I guess you could say we've sort of done our part by making available the areas that are most preferred for renewable energy development around the state, as well as areas that I guess are sort of in that next tier, that we had a step down plan that designated some other areas that we knew were sort of low resource conflict. And again, those are in variance areas. So they're kind of, they're sort of like, they're open, they're not closed, but we do a due diligence process in accepting applications on those. And so Jove is a project that found a site that works for, I guess you could say, their logic in the energy economy and to plug in. And we are simply responding to that. So we don't take an active role in trying to steer projects at any given location beyond our solar energy zones. And I hope that explains a little bit about why we can't just kind of pick a project up and drop it and move it around somewhere. We're basically responding to the needs of the market. And in this case, that's 174.
Thank you, Derek. We do not have any more questions in the queue. If you would like to enter the queue to ask your question verbally, you can click on the raise hand icon found at the bottom of your screen. Or if you're joining us from a mobile device, you might need to tap the screen to see the icons appear. We are also using the Q&A box for any typed in questions. So we will stand by for any questions that come in. We have about 7 minutes remaining in today's session.
Hi, we've got another question here. The question, will you have a list of participants in this webinar and names of key lead staff? Sorry, I joined a little late. To repeat the question, will you have a list of participants in this webinar and names of key lead staff?
So I'll go ahead and take this question. So all of the information, including the key members of those working on the project or points of contact, in addition to the webinar recording, are all going to be posted on the BLM's e-planning site. And then we have that there on the screen on the very bottom is the link for that. And then in terms of participants, for those that have submitted written comments, those will be part of the draft EIS as part of those written comments that are submitted.
All right, thank you, Erica. We don't have any more questions in the Q&A box or anyone in the queue to ask a question verbally. We have just a few more minutes in today's session. So if you have any questions, please make sure to type those into the Q&A box now, or to enter the queue for a verbal question, use the raise hand icon found at the bottom of your screen. We have a new question that came in. Dave?
The question, when will the recording be posted? Repeating, when will the recording be posted?
So they're typically posted within a couple days to no more than a couple of weeks. If you would like, since the panel is the only one that sees the question and answer, if you would like to be notified when the recording is posted, go ahead and drop your email in that Q&A and we can notify you when it is posted.
Thank you. We have no more questions in the Q&A box. And we don't have anyone in the queue for a verbal question. We will stand by for any questions that come in. With just a couple minutes remaining in today's session, if you'd like to ask a verbal question, please enter the queue now, or please type in your question into the Q&A box. To enter the queue for a verbal question, click on the raise hand icon found at the bottom of your screen. Or if you're joining from a mobile device, you might need to tap your screen to see the icons appear. It is now 4:30 p.m. Mountain Standard Time, and we have no more questions in the queue. We thank you for joining us. A recording of this presentation will be posted to the project website. Please remember, written comments for consideration in the development of the draft EIS must be submitted by February 1st, 2023. Written comments may be submitted via the project website, email, fax, or postal mail to the addresses shown on the screen. Again, thank you and have a good afternoon.